Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Rwanda boosts security on its borders as Uganda confirms that a little boy has died of Ebola and 2 of his family members are also ill. It's the first time that DR Congo's deadly epidemic has spread. Also, leaked documents seen by the UK's Guardian newspaper show that Russia's trying to turn Africa into a strategic hub. The efforts are in a bid to boost Moscow's military and economic influence on the continent. We take a closer look. And I'm joined by Bobi Wine, the Ugandan opposition politician who's become the face of calls for change from the youth in a country where around 80% of people have known only one president, Yoweri Museveni, who's been in power for 33 years. But first, on Wednesday, Rwanda ordered stricter border checks after an Ebola outbreak that's killed around 1,400 people in DR Congo crossed into Uganda. A 5-year-old boy there has died of the disease, and his grandmother and little brother have also tested positive for the virus. The outbreak was first detected in DR Congo last August.
Despite beefed-up border checks and preventative measures, Ugandan authorities have been fearing this moment for nearly a year. A case of Ebola crossing over into the country from the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo, where the second deadliest outbreak of Ebola began 11 months ago.
You wash your hands and legs, and then you're allowed to enter. If you don't wash your hands and feet, you're not allowed in. When you go in, they check your temperature. If it's bad, you're taken for treatment.
After killing over 11,000 people across Africa in the 2014 outbreak, this time around Ebola has taken the lives of nearly 1,400 people in the DRC. Despite a new and so far effective vaccine, stomping out the outbreak is proving difficult with the rise in cases in recent weeks. Conflict in the war-torn country has kept healthcare workers from accessing the ill, and the spread to Uganda has now stepped up pressure on the World Health Organization to declare a global health emergency.
There are 25,000 people crossing at Kasindi. And since the start of the response 10 months ago, 65 million people have been checked at 80 various checkpoints.
Ugandan health officials have now confirmed several cases of Ebola on its soil. The country has so far vaccinated over 4,500 health workers, and the WHO is shipping more vaccinations for medical personnel and for close contacts of those infected.
In Sudan, protest leaders that called off a general strike after 3 days have come in for criticism from some activists for diluting efforts to keep up pressure on the ruling military council to hand over to civilian-led rule. Generals took over after President Omar al-Bashir's 3 decades of rule came to an end when he was forced from power in April. Last Monday, protesters say over 100 protesters were killed in a crackdown by security forces. Ethiopia is helping mediate between opposition leaders and the military. It says that the two sides have agreed to restart stalled talks soon and that previous deals have been restored. Now, leaked documents seen by the UK's Guardian newspaper show that Russia's trying to turn Africa into a strategic hub. The efforts are in a bid to boost Moscow's military and economic influence on the continent and to secure more access to African mineral resources. Nicolas Chemin has more.
When Vladimir Putin came to power 2 decades ago, he did not show much interest for Africa. But these last 2 years, there has been a shift. This has been confirmed by leaked documents published by The Guardian. Moscow offers military assistance in exchange for access to mineral resources. The leaked documents show African countries are listed according to their level of cooperation with Russia. 5 is the highest level. The closest relations are with the Central African Republic, Sudan and Madagascar, all put at 5. Libya, Zimbabwe and South Africa are listed as 4. The director of a recent documentary that showed how Russia meddled in Madagascar's election confirmed Moscow's growing presence there.
Some groups of political strategists who had been living here for months offered money and help to at least 6 candidates of the latest presidential election. And one of them told us that the Russians asked him to withdraw before the second round and support the candidate Andrei Radziwill, who was eventually elected.
The documents show Russian missions in Africa are led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, a businessman close to Putin. He is reportedly linked to the private security firm Wagner Group. This is footage of the funeral of 3 Russian journalists who were killed last year in the Central African Republic, where they were specifically investigating the activities of the Wagner Group. The document points out that one of Russia's aims in the Central African Republic is to replace lawmakers that are too close to France. In a sign of Moscow's renewed interest for the continent, the Kremlin announced that the first ever Russia-Africa summit will be held in October in the Black Sea resort of Sochi.
Now, Nigeria had its first win at the Women's World Cup on Wednesday, with the Super Falcons defeating South Korea 2-0 in Grenoble. The victory came after an own goal by Korea and a second-half strike by Asisat Owala. Nigeria next takes on France in its final group game on Monday. Scores of people in Kenya turned out to protest against plans to build East Africa's first coal plant on Wednesday. The power station is being financed by China and is due to go up near the Lamu archipelago, which is home to diverse wildlife. Now, locals and activists have slammed the $2 billion project as being environmentally damaging and an ill-advised investment at a time that renewable energy options are getting cheaper. And Ghanaian security forces have freed 2 Canadian women who were snatched in the city of Kumasi last week. The government says that 5 Ghanaians and 3 Nigerians are being held in connection to the kidnapping. The former captives, who are 19 and 20, had been in the country as development workers. They're reportedly unharmed. Well, with me now is Ugandan opposition politician Bobi Wine. His real name's Robert Kyagulanyi, and he launched his political career in 2017 when he was voted in as an MP in a landslide vote. Since then, he's become the poster politician for the many young people in Uganda who want a change in leadership. Now, 74-year-old Yoweri Museveni has been running the country for the last 33 years, and a constitutional amendment has just been brought in to remove the 75-year-old upper age limit for the presidency. Now, the next elections are due in 2021. Bobi Wine's had several run-ins with the police, having been badly beaten last year whilst in custody. He had to go to the US for treatment for those injuries. He faces multiple charges, from treason to alleged involvement in illegal protests. Now, many observers believe that he's being politically targeted because he is a threat to the status quo in Uganda. Some of his critics, though, say that he's just a political flash in the pan. So, Bobi Wine, thanks very much for coming in to speak to me.
Thank you for having me.
So you've had a pretty tough time of it over the last year or so. In fact, ever since you launched your political career. Now, last year when you were in custody, that sparked international and national calls for your release. But looking at the international side of it, do you think that's a sign that attitudes or positions are changing in terms of global understanding of what is happening within Uganda?
Sure. Thank you very much. I believe that the world is opening its eyes wider to the realities that are ongoing in Uganda. It should be remembered that President Museveni has, and we must give it to him, has been very smart in hiding the atrocities being committed on his people back home. Many people have called him a benevolent dictator because he has been able to suppress the voices back home while he presents himself to the rest of the world as a democrat. He has stifled all freedoms, no freedom of expression. He has rigged elections, and indeed he has unleashed terror to the people of Uganda. But now, we are glad that the world is beginning to see Museveni for the dictator that he is, and they are beginning to hear the cries of the people of Uganda.
So we're talking about elections there. The next ones are up in 2021, and it's most likely that Museveni is going to be running in that, because we've just seen any barriers that would have been created by his age removed by that constitutional amendment. First question, are you going to be running in those 2021 elections?
First of all, yes, we are expecting elections, and if it was business as usual, President Museveni would be expected to rig the elections using the military as usual. However, our entry as the young people of Uganda is a breath of fresh air, because we are the majority. We are over 85% of the population. And that is not enough. Even the elders are with us. And indeed, the people of Uganda are more united than ever before. So yes, I've said it before and I'm saying it now, that my team and I are seriously considering challenging President Museveni in the next presidential elections. And that's less than 2 years away.
That's considering, but you haven't decided totally.
We are yet to arrive on a final decision. We are trying to build synergies. We are bringing together all forces of change so that we go into this more united than ever before. Yes, we have spoken, and we are many contenders. Anyone among us that we choose to lead us will be blessed to lead us. And yes, I've said it before, and I'm saying it, that should the team choose me to lead them, I'm equally ready to challenge the guy.
So some of your critics say that you have, you may be the face for the youth, and that you may have been popular because of your previous career, well, your career as a musician. So what specifically do you want to change in Uganda? What are some of the policies that you would like to implement if you did get into a position to do so?
Well, it should be known that Uganda is not short of amazing policies. We have had very many propositions that have been well researched, intelligently thought through, and indeed presented. However, because of the rampant corruption and the lack of rule of law, none of them has not been implemented. So our policy is going to be mainly implementation. Even if we just implemented the 10-point program that Museveni was singing 33 years ago, we would be ahead. Yes, we've had very many programs. We've had the Vision 2040 and many others that are presented nicely and shelved. They are not implemented because of the rampant corruption. And yes, most of the corruption scandals are traced back to the president's office or to his family members or cronies. So our main target is implementing the policies, the programs that have been suggested in the past.
And were you surprised by the size of your following when you entered into politics?
Well, I wasn't surprised before because the many years I've spent as a singer, I've been reaching all the common people, and the sentiment has been the same. Change, change, change. Only that many of the politicians that have been presenting themselves, yes, many of them have been bought up, many have been intimidated, but also many of them have been comfortable with only elevating their position in the dictatorship and not looking at putting an end to it. So to see many people coming up, many people agreeing with us is a reflection of what has been building up within the population.
So you've been following what's been going on in Sudan. Do you think that that in any way is going to boost your efforts to bring about change by appealing to the populace? When people look across the border and they see, I mean, yes, there are continued problems in Sudan, but that at one point would have been completely unimaginable that Omar Bashir would be forced out. Does that in any way feed into any of the aspirations that you have for what you hope to see in Uganda?
The recent events in Sudan certainly feed into the events occurring and to occur in Uganda in the near future. And not only Sudan, dictators have been kicked away. In the recent past, you must have seen what happened in Algeria and what happened in Libya and indeed in Burkina Faso. And recently it happened in Sudan. That shows you that the people in Africa are standing up to the dictators. It should be remembered that Omar el-Bashir was a more ferocious dictator. He had a bigger army and he was even more sophisticated than Yoweri Museveni. He was a field marshal in the army, but he was kicked away by people power. So that inspires us to believe more, to push more, and indeed to work more to the liberation of our country.
And just finally, you've had a lot of trouble in terms of performing. I think it's 120 concerts that have been cancelled over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind the size of your political ambitions, is it worth still trying to perform as a musician?
Well, I'm a musician. I'm only here because I'm a Ugandan and it's my responsibility. I've been blessed with a loud voice that can communicate to people across all classes and all walks of life. So I'm trying to use it the same way I'm encouraging the doctors, the farmers, the teachers to use all they have to see that we liberate our country.
Thank you very much, Bobi Wine, for coming in to speak to us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.
Okay, ladies, you are a fantastic team of journalists. For this event, the whole world will be watching you, will be listening to you. You will be broadcasting live in special editions on the website and on social media. Now, your analysis, your expertise, your rigor are vital for such an event. So, ladies, you must give it all you've got. Are we ready?
With France 24's team, follow the Women's World Cup.